Good afternoon for most everybody. Good morning for maybe one or two people.
Me?
I am trying to shovel food in between meetings, so I'm here, but I'll be off camera.
It looks like we've got a few more people to trickle in anyway.
What do we normally give it to, like 5 after as the absolute start time?
Yeah, I think about then.
Yeah. Okay. All right, we have 8. I think we could probably start. All right, I can start by reading the intro script, and I put the link in to the meeting notes in the chat for anyone who needs that. Let me go find this intro script here. Hello, everyone. Just a reminder that this meeting is being recorded and will be posted to LFX and YouTube shortly after. Your participation in these meetings is an agreement to abide by the Cloud Native Security Code of Conduct, which can be found in the repo. I think that's probably the talk repo. I need at least one person to volunteer as a scribe. I see, Evan, you're already writing things, so if you would like to, that'd be great. All right, and then for anyone who is new to the group, I don't see any new faces, but would anyone like to introduce themselves? All right, cool, no new members. And then I think for the community demo, we have Brant talking about the security manager role in GitHub. Go for it, Brant.
All right. New day, new machine. I am expecting it to block me as I try to share, but we're going to see if I'm pleasantly surprised. But let's get that set up. Really, the cusp of this is just a completely ad hoc thought to thinking about the CNCF, thinking about other foundations and just open source projects in their GitHub organizations. Other projects may use different Git infrastructure, but commonly we see a lot of GitHub use. What things are out there for us to think about with regards to security? In particular, how do we empower individuals? How do we try to scale some of that where possible, put in some baselines, put in some guardrails? So I'm kind of just looking across GitHub, and there's a lot of maybe recommendations for how to set your GitHub up for like enterprise best practices. I see a little bit less focus on how to set up your GitHub organization for like open source best practices. Not to say it doesn't exist, not to say there's a material out there that doesn't have all that documented, but a lot of it just seems kind of like people invent what they need as they need it. They course correct, they change settings and whatnot. So started thinking about that and started to say, is there something that exists? Kind of came across the idea of the security manager role in GitHub. And so I can go and point back to that, but mainly just kind of collected a couple thoughts and worked with my favorite GPT to help me kind of coalesce some of the points. But nonetheless, when we think about kind of like a GitHub organization, and hopefully this share is coming across large enough. I can't see it.
I can
But-
see it. Yeah.
It is. Do you want to? Is there a link, or is this like something that you're still working on?
This is just local to me currently. I haven't published
Okay.
it yet. That's a great call. But really, I think just to kind of run through it quickly, there is a kind of role within GitHub that's standard. You certainly create your own. You could certainly, have your own committees and permissions around these security processes and build this out for yourself. But when you start a GitHub organization and you start to say, okay, what roles are already readily available? The security manager is one of them. And you can typically see this. If you go to a GitHub organization and pull down their members list, you can see sometimes a delineation of like standard membership and security managers. That could be for various purposes, like reporting some finding in the appropriate manner. But the role exists, and I thought this is really kind of a neat way to facilitate some discussion around like how would we use this? What would we recommend? And then also, is there kind of a call to action to maybe continue to advocate for more like inclusive behaviors of what does it mean to contribute? Because I think that largely a lot of people wear multiple hats, and that's great if you know the underlying function and structure of a project. Maybe you're in a good position to think about the security implications. But at the same time, if you wanted to scale this a little bit, what might this offer you? So thinking about security manager, it's pretty high level. None of this is going to be all that like crazy with regards to permissions. You get read access by default. Wonderful. You can now see everything across the organization for the various repositories. It puts you in a position to start managing security alerts. And so when we think about security dashboards, if you go to your org level, and I probably should have shared multiple screens here so people can see various points, but if you go to your org for GitHub and go to the security tab, you can kind of get a full encompassing view of kind of like where are you? Are there dependent bot alerts? Are there other findings? Are there other things that you're not doing that you should be doing? Kind of coalesce that into one view versus repository by repository. So getting access to that is important. Once you have access to that and you kind of start to try to mitigate and remediate various things, you want the ability to have the permissions to actually perform that. So triaging, dismissing, acting on various things, that can all be done through this role. Configuring security features, if you're running through and you want to enable or disable something with like GitHub Advanced Security, you want to have access to that. And then most importantly, what I wanted to try to continue to emphasize is this is not like admin rights, right? Like we don't want to, wherever possible, allow anybody to have admin when they one, they don't need it, but then two, they shouldn't have it. And so when you're giving anybody a role or permission within GitHub, you always want to maybe evaluate what that means. What is the impact? And so by default, this role is pretty least privileged access, which is great. So a lot of this means kind of various different things. And I kind of already covered each of these already. And so once we think about, kind of like, hey, this role exists, you have people that are a good fit. Tech security historically, when we're evaluating projects or projects are coming on to present, we've asked, hey, does your project, organization have people who are maybe the security points of contact? And again, you could do all of this without implementing this role. That's perfectly fine. But there's neat opportunities to say, if we had a best best practice for GitHub? What would that look like? How could you implement it? And what could these people do? And I want to frame kind of the conversation a little bit with that, as to say, are there people out there who, again, are these security expertise? Maybe they operate across many domains. Maybe they work with a lot of different projects in their job or in open source, but they don't maybe have the underlying like lower level skills for developing the software. They're mainly very well positioned for like evaluating architecture and thinking about security considerations or patterns they've seen. What might these people, not be aware that, I'd say not be aware that they can contribute back to open source, but also our maintainers are unaware that they might want to recruit these people to kind of assist them with their projects. And so kind of through a quick 90-day, like, what would this look like if you were to onboard and try to start doing things, auditing, looking at where are you, what's your baseline, start looking at all the findings and various stuff, implementing and starting to triage, proposing new baselines, I think is kind of a really big one, rather than like actually doing anything first and foremost, but then just saying, hey, here's where we stand, here's what a baseline could get us. What does this look like? Hey, does everybody like this approach? Is there different ways we could go about this? To then, actually enforcing, putting policies in place, configurations, and then kind of like showing how this affects. Is there a good point in time where we see, hey, we never looked at our organizational view, and Dependabot said there were 30 vulnerabilities being reported. We just didn't know about it, so we never looked. And now with somebody actually kind of wearing that hat primarily, it's not somebody's fourth or fifth hat, they can say, yeah, like, let me just kind of incrementally work down on improving this little by little and see kind of what that progress looks like. And so kind of all in all, I think there's cool opportunities present for, one, the tag security and compliance. Are there other groups of people outside of project maintainers and project contributors that are unaware that there are other contributing opportunities than solely code or documentation? There could be opportunities such as like roles within an organization to perform something like this. And how can we start to maybe recruit some of those individuals to join us? Any questions? Yes, Evan.
I guess it's not necessarily really a question, but I work on something kind of related to this. And it feels like one of the challenges is actually establishing the baseline set of security configurations you want. There isn't sort of a reference for that. And beyond that, checking and keeping these things, enforced, my feeling is that GitHub's tools are not great for it. So I think the security manager role is potentially an interesting tool. I'm not sure we have a lot of projects that are at the point where this is more than a 2-hour effort, that's probably done maybe once a year. But I do think that spelling out, hey, you should, for example, be turning on secret push protection on all your repos, which appears to be a repo by repo operation, is something that we should sort of advocate for and explain. Oh, I'm happy to explain rule sets to you too, John, if you want. They're basically branch protection done right. So GitHub's original branch protection API has, it matches most specific, and you won't have one set of rules. And if you say, here's a rule for all releases, and then you add something for one other release, it overrides all the previous settings for release branches because that one's more specific. Rule sets basically let you add up the restrictions rather than last one wins.
Yes, and like to your original comment, I agree. I think there are a lot of like disparate pieces of the puzzle that still don't really work together well or don't map across things incredibly intuitively. I think how we mature that and then overlay it against projects that have no baseline, I think is really interesting.
Brant, did you find in your research that the role works the best if an organization has adopted a tool like GitHub Advanced Security? Is that kind of what it's designed to facilitate, is setting those organizational profiles? Or was it kind of for a different purpose?
I think that it's well positioned for that. And I was going back through some of the historics just to understand exactly like how things have evolved. Because I believe that the security manager role in its original implementation was actually repo by repo. And then GitHub at like the end of 2024 actually changed that to be more of a organization API. And so I think at that point in time, and with the probably evidence to suggest making that change, there was a good push for moving it to the organizational role perspective and then being empowered to say, manage these repositories, establish baselines for the whole organization, and do these things like advanced security.
If you are an enterprise, which I am not, so I haven't actually looked at these, it appears there's also a notion of security campaigns where you can set up something to be rolled or pushed out to repositories, maybe by going and asking the owners to toggle flags or something like that. If somebody wants me to, help consult with them on that, I'm happy to figure it out. But it does require that you're, paying the $25 a month or more for GitHub. And I've never done that.
GitHub has free functionality that does stuff similar to this GitHub with policy inheritance and stuff like that. You have to ask more on the channel. I actually had to step away a minute while you were talking, so I may also just be like making things up because I don't really understand exactly the functionality you do, but it can do stuff like inherit policies from multiple different sources. Like you can imagine different orgs that you take some policy information from, combine them together, do stuff like that. And it also is backwards compatible with all your, like you can use it in coordination with policies on GitHub or GitLab or wherever else. Yeah, I agree.
Can I sign you up to get someone to talk about that in November?
Yes, but I think I might have already, did I already put something down or not?
Not yet.
Oh yeah, because the calendar didn't go that far out, I think, and I checked. I was going to, but then yeah, that would be great. And if you can just ping me, like Patrick will be the one who will do it.
Okay.
I'll make sure he does, but we need to
Do you
know
think
the date.
October 29th or later would be your...
I will be away October 29th, so I will not be attending this meeting then.
Okay.
I prefer it was a date that I'm here. So
November 5th?
It should work, but I just need to check with him.
Okay, yeah, this is going to be tentative.
Okay.
All right, any more discussion on the community demo? Thanks, Brant. All right, I think we can move on to the next item then. Was anyone at the APAC meeting and want to talk about anything that was discussed there?
Looks like they had a bunch of content, but I wasn't there.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it real quick. There was some discussion about the IAM white paper. I didn't know if anyone had wanted to bring that up or talk about it. And then there was discussion about a policy as code white paper, which might have been discussed at the last meeting.
For the IAM, it seems like they got some feedback from the TOC who requested they turn the, I don't remember how many pages, like 37-page white paper into a 5-page white paper. And so I think we're waiting to achieve some clarity with the TOC on what that requirement is and kind of where it came from for that one.
All right. Was anyone at the TOC meeting that wants to give an update?
I don't believe there was a public one. I don't know if there were any private ones.
Okay. Then we can move on to project updates, I think. Evan or Matt, did you guys want to give an update on the supply chain project, the supply chain insights?
Hi.
Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, so we met this week. I guess the two main updates that come to mind are we moved out until after KubeCon. One of the tasks around reviewing a whole bunch of content and curating resources on the CRA. And I've been working on a data collector tool that scans GitHub repos, looking for a couple of things, enumerating all of the release assets to look for keys, signatures, but primarily SBOMs out of CNCF projects or open source repos generally, as well as looking through CI workflows to identify common tools used to generate SBOMs or other security artifacts, including some scanning tools and some static analysis tools. Mostly it's sort of like the investigatory phase of how can we ferret out SBOMs to go actually analyze. Jen had some good insights too, to look at security insights and some other things that we can auto find. And I'm going to be doing some hand sleuthing as well to identify how CNCF projects today are doing things. It also captures metadata from the landscape that the CNCF already curates, which importantly has links to package repositories, Docker repos, and other things like that per project. So I gave a brief update on that tool, but that was pretty much it. We had some discussion. I think we're moving along. It's a small set of folks that have been contributing and participating. But I think we're on track given what we expected, a 6 to 9 month timeline. This is the early couple of weeks and months of getting a base data set together so that we can then start looking at what's in SBOMs for CNCF projects and making some recommendations and gathering some insights. I don't know, Jen or Evan, do you have other stuff that you think is worth surfacing at this point? I'm doing a demo lastly next week on that tool for the community demo.
Yeah, I would say that we've done a bunch of preliminary investigation, but don't yet have milestone 1, you know, a firm time when we think we might complete milestone 1. Brant.
I think, Evan, I've seen you post links to this before, but the whole minimum elements guidance or request for comments or other things from the SBOM perspective, is that part of this, like, I guess, evaluation of what should be in Project SBOMs?
It's probably not a bad thing to include.
That's
Sorry,
fair.
what was it called? I'm not sure what you were referring to.
The minimum elements for SBOMs. There was a CISA, the U.S. Cybersecurity Agency, request for comment on what the minimum elements should be. They had a document. That comment period ended on October 3rd.
Oh,
And yeah, basically it says, you know, hey, if you're going to have an SBOM, you know, it should at least include these fields because people were generating all kinds of stuff.
I think it's kind of reasonable that could be something to like remain cognizant of, but maybe is a separate like whole box of its own scope.
but it's
I
exactly
think,
after
yeah.
you, Evan. Sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, I think that that's probably something interesting that could be done with the SBOMs we collect, but I don't think it's going to be our primary focus, assuming that the data quality is sufficient that we can answer our questions. If it turns out that they're missing elements that would, you know, that mean that we can't really answer the questions we want to, then maybe we go back and say, okay, well, how many of these are, you know, even have the minimum elements?
Yeah, I think that last part is eminently doable, right? Like we're literally looking for SBOMs now, and I haven't found all that many of them yet. I'm sure they're there, but sleuthing out where they are hasn't happened. But once we do have them, at least using Guac and some of the other tools we've identified, we should be able to answer that question. And I think it's a useful thing to report on, you know, like as a data point for all the CNCF projects, for all the SBOMs that we know about. Right, which ones of them meet this bar and which don't, just as a bellwether for where we're at across the ecosystem. That's useful. I'll add this to our document. We have a Google sheet that tracks all the documents that we know about that are interesting, so I'll add this. Thank you.
All right. Any updates on security assessments?
Yep. The Kyverno assessment looks like it's actually going to happen. We got some responses from the Kyverno side, and Andy Martin's leading from our side. Eddie Knight, myself, Robert, who I don't actually know I probably know Robert, but I don't know by the GitHub name. Sunstone Robert and a few other people have all signed on. Now's a great time to do an assessment, to participate if you want to. This is one that has like already kind of a lot of people on it, so that presumably know what they're doing. So we should actually have like quite reasonable comments and things like that for people who are observing or looking at things. So yeah, that's actually starting to move along.
Awesome news.
Thanks. Yeah, I expected so. I didn't know how to say his name, so I didn't want to say that. But yeah, let me see. I can maybe add him into the channel then.
All right, for compliance and automated governance, I think I might have an update there. I don't know if anyone else had an update or wanted to talk about the discussion from last week. My main update is that I submitted an initiative for the Cloud Native Security Controls Catalog refresh. Right now, it's sitting in needs triage because I wasn't exactly sure, now that our charter is approved, what our process is for just saying like, yes, we want to do this initiative. Do we all like give a thumbs up here and say, yep, we're good with it, and then we move it through? So I wanted to just mention that. And then I think there's also some possible interest in the other initiative that we've talked about, the automated governance white paper, but still talking about that in Slack. So I think that one's still kind of up in the air on interest. So yeah, I'll stop there if anyone has questions or wants to talk about this one a little bit more.
My understanding is that we can now approve initiatives on our own. So we could say go ahead today if we, read through it and it looks good.
All right, I'm just reading Eddie's comment in the chat. That's a good point to understand the TOC requirements for initiatives before we move forward. Okay. All right, so maybe once we understand those a bit better, we can just thumbs up on the issue. And if we meet the requirements and we all agree, then we can move it forward and then start doing creating a meeting slot and getting a Slack channel stood up and everything. So we can start working on that. Any other project updates that I'm forgetting about?
Not that I'm thinking of.
Okay. All right, triage of current issues. Let me open this up. This opens up to an interesting place. Okay. Here, I can share my screen with our board. I don't think we have a lot. So here is actually the initiative that I was just talking about. So I'll open that up, and we don't have to look at it in real time, but I was just going to give the link for anybody who is interested in taking a look. And then I'll move over to tag items. I'll try to move over to tag items. It's interesting. I see things from other tags in here. I think our filtering must have got messed up at some point.
Projects and tags are independent of each other. And so someone may have put something in this project by accident.
Okay, I see. Yeah, because I was just noticing those tag infrastructure ones. Is there any update? Do we need to talk about the MCP authentication and authorization standards white paper? Anything there?
So there is a Slack channel now created. It's unfortunately private right now. I think we're having conversations about helping people feel comfortable making it public, I think. And the coordination right now is when to have the first meeting. So if folks are interested and you're not in the channel, reach out to me and I can add you to the channel. Hopefully it'll be public soon. without any severe objections. And also, the scoping will be defined first off. So kind of what's in scope and what's out of scope.
Excellent. So the best place to just get added to the channel would be like go into tag security and compliance Slack and be like, hey, I want to be part of this initiative. Like that would be a good thing to do.
Yeah, actually, I'll post a message there inviting people to join and to just
Okay.
Tag in that thread.
Okay, sounds good.
So Brant's question, MCP security generically. So the specific cloud native angle to this is around, let me just look at the authentication and authorization standards. So being able to pull in the relevant CNCF technologies, I think, to that, whether it's SPIFFE Spire or OPA. There's references to OTel as well in there as far as getting some observability and telemetry. So it'll be interesting to see how the scoping works out as we get into it. But yeah, definitely want to make it cloud native so we don't run into any issues later on.
All right. Anything else on this topic? I didn't see anything else in this list that we might need to talk about, but if you guys see something as I'm scrolling through, feel free to call it out. All right, I think we can move on to the next item then. Here, I'll stop sharing. And general stand-up and check-ins from partner groups. Does anyone have anything from partner groups? Maybe it would be good to talk about what those groups are exactly. Do we have a list that we should put on here?
I think that line item is just for like if anybody was sitting on the call wanting to share something from OpenSSF or some other like it hasn't been topically
the-
appropriated yet.
Or the TCG.
Oh, you mean the secure supply chain technical community group? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Did that ever start? Actually, that's a good question. I forgot that was a thing.
I see Marina actually had to drop early,
Yeah.
but she's an organizer, right? Okay.
I was going to ask about that, but I can't.
Okay. So maybe an item for next meeting. Unless we can quickly find that information, but I don't know that we could. All right, next item is schedule the next meeting's community demo, which I can take a look. But seeing as we have 20 minutes left, I wanted to just ask if anyone has any topics that they want to bring up in the last 20 minutes that we could expand on or take 20 minutes back.
We've got demos scheduled for the next few weeks, so.
We do. All right. It sounds like folks might want that time back, maybe to get some lunch. So, all right. Thanks everyone for joining, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for hosting, Jen.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Super efficient. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.